Once a year, my parents insisted I take a blood bath. It always took place the day before my birthday, a tradition I didn't enjoy but never questioned. My mother would guide me to the tub while my father sat on the edge, dipping his fingers into the water to check the temperature for me. I would sit still while they poured it over my skin and hair, making sure I was completely coated before letting me leave. Then, I had to wait as it dried, the sticky sensation making my skin feel tight. Afterward, they would tuck me into bed with a hug and a kiss. On my birthday, the first thing I did was shower it off, watching the red swirl down the drain. Then, the day unfolded like any other. Singing, presents, and cake. It never occurred to me that our tradition was anything but normal. I was especially excited about my 10th birthday, thrilled by the thought of finally having 2 digits to my age. I had been homeschooled my whole life but had plenty of neighborhood friends to invite to my party. While talking to my friend Jimmy about whether he could come, I caught a glimpse behind the veil. "Ah man, I have to visit my cousins on Saturday, but maybe I can play with you the day before," he said. I thought about it, but knew my annual bath was scheduled for that day. Disappointed, I explained to him why that wouldn't work. "Shucks, that's the day I have to take my bath," I told him. "Okay, well maybe after that?" he asked. "No, I'll be all sticky. Plus, the blood gets on everything," I said, realizing immediately that I had said something wrong. His expression shifted, and he went running his mouth to everyone, calling me a vampire, which upset both of our parents, though for different reasons. That night, I had my first conversation about the blood baths with my father. He sat me down on the couch, his expression turning serious. "Now, Ben, this will be the last time you ever mention the baths you have to take," he said sternly. He explained that not everything we did was considered normal, and that keeping it to myself would be doing us all a favor. After that conversation, I became more curious. It intrigued me that not everyone had to take these baths. As I entered my teenage years, I did what every rebellious boy does. I pushed boundaries hard. Since I wasn't in school, I made an extra effort to fit in with my friends. I smoked, vandalized, and stole alcohol from my parents. Some of it was peer pressure, but much of it was my own choice. I wanted a reputation to be seen as some kind of rebel. So I kept pushing, widening the gap between my parents and me. On the eve of my 16th birthday, I decided I would refuse my blood bath. I was lying on my bed, reading and listening to music, when my mother came in to let me know it was ready. I already knew what was coming and had my response ready. "I'm not taking it," I said, refusing to look up from my book. "Ben, please don't make this difficult. You know you need to," she pleaded, wringing her hands. I ignored her, continuing to read. After a while, my father came down to see what was going on. "What's happening?" he asked from the doorway. My mother explained the situation, and his face turned bright red. "Ben, this is happening whether you like it or not," he shouted. I threw my book across the room. "Oh, you think so?" I snapped back, bristling at the challenge. His eyes widened, and his nostrils flared. He was angrier than I had ever seen him. "That's right," he growled. Without thinking, I charged at him, knocking him aside and sprinting down the stairs. I could hear him yelling at me all the way down the driveway, begging me to come back. I ran for a long time, eventually stopping to rest at a city bus stop, breathless. As I sat there, I began to feel a strange sensation in my fingers. They tingled at first, then grew hot. In horror, I watched as blisters formed, crawling up my fingers, cracking open as they spread. I howled in agony, unable to stop the terrible sensation as the skin continued to bubble and crack, making its way up my arms to my elbows. I was alone, my cries for help unanswered. Then headlights appeared in front of me. Though I was nearly blinded by pain, I recognized my father's car. He rushed out, grabbing me under my armpits and pulling me into the vehicle. I continued to scream, showing him my blistering arms. We sped down the road, my father cursing the whole way. His face pale, he told me to hang on, that I'd be okay soon. I thought he was taking me to the hospital, but when we pulled into our driveway, my arms and shoulders looked like raw meat. The skin blistered down my neck and sides. It was the worst pain I had ever felt. My body went into shock. I vaguely remember being carried out of the car, my mother rushing to help. They carried me upstairs, both of them straining under my weight. Then, everything went black. When I came to, voices surrounded me, distorted at first but gradually becoming clearer. The pain was fading, and I could feel warmth against my skin. Blood. The bloodbath. My parents were beside me, both in tears, telling me how worried they had been, how they couldn't live without me. Their words cut through me, making me realize how awful I had been over the past year. They held my hands as I let the blood soak into my skin, healing the damage. The next year, I had learned my lesson. My father prepared the bath for me, giving me a half smile as I thanked him for doing so. I never asked why I had to take them, never questioned where the blood came from. It was just something we all knew was better left unspoken. This brings me to this year. My father, now in his 60s, sat me down again. "Ben, it's time you understand some things." He went on to explain that during my mother's pregnancy with me, she had complications. She was on bed rest, barely able to move. I was born 2 weeks early, underweight and very sickly. My father explained how helpless he felt, watching the doctors and nurses do everything they could to keep me alive. "I begged to trade places with you to take the suffering away," he said, his eyes brimming with tears. There was a man I'd seen at the hospital who noticed what we were going through. He offered to help us. He told me he knew a way to keep you alive. I didn't want to hear it, but he kept insisting, saying he was some kind of angel. As you got sicker and closer to death, he kept offering. I shook my head. This was so much to process. My father continued, wiping away tears. "Ben, I was desperate. I loved you so much. I couldn't lose you. So I agreed. I asked him to do whatever he had to, and just like that, you started getting better. It was a miracle." He wiped his eyes and leaned back, trying to gather his thoughts. "It was just before your first birthday when I saw the man again. He told me the only way for you to survive was for me to give you your bloodbaths every year. At first, I didn't believe him, but then we saw what was happening to your skin. Just like when you turned 16, but slower," he said, his voice trembling. "So I did what I had to do. I filled the tub, and I've done it every year since. I'm sorry, son. I wish things could have been different." I leaned forward and hugged him, speechless. We stayed like that for a while. Finally, he pulled away and faced me again. "Ben, there's something else you need to know. You know I'm getting older. There will come a time, maybe sooner than we think, when I won't be here anymore," he said, his voice cracking. "Ben, when that happens, you'll have to start filling the tub yourself.